When you buy weekend property and your plan is to get there and spend extended amounts of time there, you're not just out picking a piece of land, picking a piece of property, you're picking a path. You really have three main options. Either you can find something that's already built, you can find some raw land and just go completely from scratch, or you can find a piece of land that maybe has an old building on it, like an old barn or something that you can repurpose. And each one of those is going to trade time, money, and flexibility completely differently. And the bad thing is if you make a wrong move, it could cost you a boatload of money, and even worse, it could cost you a lot of time. You see, when people call me about hunting for a weekend property, it usually starts the same way. We just want a little piece to get away. We want a little piece of property to escape on. But what they're really deciding, they just don't know it yet, is how are they going to spend the next 10 years of their life? Because building from scratch, that's a project. Finding something that already exists, that's searching for a specific lifestyle that you're comfortable with. And sometimes the best opportunity is hiding in plain sight. It's that old rundown barn or an outbuilding that's just waiting to be reimagined as something new. So today I'm going to walk you through exactly what I've seen on all sides of this. The data, the hidden cost, the emotional turmoil that may come with it. And at the end of the video, hopefully what you're going to find is the path that's right for you, that fits your goals, fits your budget, and more importantly, probably fits your patience level. The first thing you have got to start with is, why are you buying this property? Why does this thing need to be in your life? Does it exist solely as a weekend getaway? Is this a place where you're going to get away, maybe hunt and fish, or even just escape out into the trees just to get away from people? Are you going to treat this as a legacy property? Do you want to continue to build on this, maybe multiple structures, and pass this down to your kids and grandkids someday? Or are you buying a piece of property that you think you may want to retire on, and you're going to start out with a little cabin just to get away on the weekends, just as a trial run to see if that's actually where you want to spend your retirement years? Because that why, the why of why you're buying it, that's going to define everything else with this property. The size of it, the distance from home, the amenities that you're going to need, the amount of work that you're willing to put in on it. Because if the simple goal is just a place to unplug on weekends, maybe a simple little, ready-built cabin that you can just move on, or that somebody's already done, that's 2 hours away from your current house, maybe that's the exact right thing. But if you're looking at it as a legacy property, maybe something that you're going to retire to later, maybe raw land's a better way to go. Let's talk about raw land first. If raw land's the way you're going to go, you are going to have the most flexibility. It's also going to be the most complex way to go about it. It's probably going to have a little bit lower price per acre if there's nothing on it whatsoever, but you're going to have complete control out of what's built, how it's built, why it's built, where it's built, absolutely everything. And that's the dream for a lot of people. I mean, that's the dream for me. But if you're not quite sure what you're getting into, there can be a lot of friction involved with raw land. First thing that you have to really understand is infrastructure costs. How much is that septic system going to cost? How much is it going to cost to get electricity to the site? How much is a water well going to cost? Or are you going to have to do rainwater collection, go off grid? All of those infrastructure sites are going to add costs that aren't in that raw land price that you may be able to find if something's already done, or if it at least has some amenities in place like a barn or a shop. The second thing people underestimate on it is timeline risks. I mean, if you buy a raw piece of land, the likelihood, unless you're going to move in a pre-done cabin or something like that, the likelihood of having something in place and completed within 18 to 24 months can be a pipe dream at times. It takes a lot longer when you start taking into account permitting and getting approvals for septic and getting approvals for wells and things like that. Timeline risk is a real thing. Another thing that it's a little bit trickier than if you're finding something that's already done is financing. Okay, you have to find a specific bank that's going to finance raw land loans. You're not going to go to Rocket Mortgage or something like that to get a raw land loan. Then it comes, are you going to do a construction loan to build something on it? That's another little twist on there. And I've got several videos on that. If that's something that you want to look into, just head over to my channel. But the idea here is, yes, you've got all this flexibility, but if you don't plan it out just right and make these contingencies up front, you could end up spending, I mentioned 18 to 24 months. Hell, it could take you 3, 4, 5 years. I know people who bought land 8, 9 years ago that still have not done anything with it, because at this point they just feel overwhelmed and life kind of caught up with them. And the kids started growing up, and now they're doing volleyball and soccer and softball and all the things, right? So that timeline is a real consideration when you start taking into account all of the things that you have to plan out along the way. Now, that doesn't mean that it's wrong though, okay? I mean, you just have to make sure that you're good at planning, taking into account liquidity for, for projects that you're gonna do. I mean, heck, the engineer in you may absolutely love it, but I just want you to make sure that you're taking these things into consideration if that's something that you're wanting to do. Now, let's take a look at the second one that I'm thinking of, and that's just buying something that's completely ready to build. Okay. Ultimate convenience, but The major downside is, are you going to have to make concessions to what you want on your property or what you want your property to look based on what somebody else envisioned for the property before you bought it? And I mean, it seems great, right? You can drive out next weekend, take all your stuff out there, stock the cabin or whatever it looks like, and get to relaxing. Convenience is, that's the ultimate convenience. But how many times have you looked at something on homes.com or Zillow and said, man, that would have been perfect if they did this? Well, there's not a lot of ready-built kind of weekend places ready to go that have necessarily been given a lot of thought. I've seen a lot of really bad layouts. I've seen a lot of really bad designs. I've seen a lot of properties that could have been oriented any way possible, but for some reason they put the back deck facing to the west, and so now anytime you sit out there in the Texas summer, it's absolutely miserable. So yes, convenience, perfect, get out there, get to living right away, but you're going to end up dealing with other people's, we'll call them mistakes along the way. And then one of the other things that you may be running into on that is if it's already done, and especially if it's a really nice place, like if you look at it and you're like, holy cow, that place is perfect, you are definitely going to be paying a premium for that property because not many of them exist like that. You know, I look all the time in Colorado and Arkansas and Utah and other places around the US, and when I see a property that I'm like, wow, it looks like they really did this thing right, it's going to come at a price premium and a lot of times 50-60% higher than what you're seeing other properties sell for. Now, real quick, before we get on to repurposing, I want to remind you, if you're looking to move somewhere in Texas and this is what you're trying to do, give me a call. I can help you. If you're trying to go out of state somewhere, especially if it's somewhere where you don't live, like my goal at some point is going to be to move up to the mountains in Colorado. If that's something you're wanting to do and you don't have resources on the ground up there, let me know. And just about any state, because I know realtors from all over the place. I've known them for a long time. I network with a lot of people that are doing the exact same thing that I do with land and kind of rural getaways and stuff like that. So if it's something that you're looking for in another state and you don't know where to start in that state, reach out to me and let me know. I'm more than happy to put you in contact with the resources that I have there. Now, this last one, most people don't even think about this. You know, they're looking at raw land, or they're looking at this, or looking, you know, here's a place that's already done. But this is the one that's at my heart, right? It's the wannabe architect in me, the wannabe woodworker, you know, whatever you're talking about. It's finding a place that's got a structure on it that when you see the structure, it just makes you feel warm. Now, you know, I see a lot of old log cabins. Okay, that's really cool to me. I would love to find an old log cabin that I can, you know, make some tweaks on. But what stands out even more than that for me is old barns. I mean, I was just up in the Dallas area and I was driving to the Airbnb that we were staying in, and right around this corner, you just make this corner, and it's an old dairy barn, and it was probably 1,500 square feet. And I'm looking at this thing going, my God, that would make the perfect weekend getaway. So let's chat a little bit about this repurposing thing. A lot of times with this, you can have some of the same benefits that you would get with something that's already finished out. A lot of times you're gonna have electric that's already there. You're probably gonna have water that's already there. Now, you may not have septic or something like that, so you're still gonna have to plan on that, but some of those amenities may already be in place. And the other thing that I think is absolutely amazing with it is you can still have that creative piece of it. The creativity stays with you, but at the same time, you already have a start, especially you know, if the barn's got a great foundation, you don't have to come in and pour concrete inside, or if it's a building that actually has interesting lines and it's not just one of these metal buildings with a stupid you know, low slung roof on it. But if you can find something that when you see it just kind of makes you go, okay, wow, that's cool. If it's good structurally, you're going to be ahead of the process from a design perspective. Now, you just get to come and put your little twist on it. The key on this is obviously going to be, if you find something that you're in love with, make sure that the structural integrity of it is sound. If you're not a structural engineer, you may want to have a structural engineer come out. At the very least, you need to get a local builder out there to look at the structure and tell you, hey, this thing is about to fall down, or man, this thing is built really, really well. You're going to have some options to do this. Okay, if you've got structural integrity, then at that point, now you can start investing your money in the rest of the infrastructure. Okay, do you need that septic system? Okay, now you can put it in. What is it going to take to renovate that structure, whatever? I'm going to call it a barn because that's kind of my dream. What's it going to take to renovate that barn? Well, I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to put in doors. I'm going to have to put in windows. I'm going to have to insulate. I'm going to have to come up with some type of inside material to cover the walls, right? And it's probably going to be barn wood. You know, you're going to have to put electricity in there, you're going to have to put plumbing in there, but if structural integrity is solid, or if it can be salvaged, then all the other stuff is just kind of like adding to that freaking cool structure that you found. And again, to me, you know, this one is for the right buyer. You've got to be a person like me, but this can be the most rewarding, because you're not just buying land. And look, it's cool to buy land and reimagine something, you know, and come in here around this little lake and clear this out and make some little steps down and have a little dock and stuff like that. Okay, that's cool. But if you can find an old structure that may have been built 100 years ago, 150 years ago, and you can reimagine that, you're preserving history. Like you're doing something that very few people get the ability to do. So for me, repurposing, it is the way to go. So now that we've kind of talked about it, let's compare some of the numbers here. And I'm going to give you numbers here in the Texas Hill Country. Again, wherever you're looking to do this, this could change a little bit, but you know, 10 acres out here is going to run you somewhere between $275,000 and $300,000. Okay, when you start bringing in electric, water, and septic, you're probably looking at another $80,000 roughly. Then you're going to need a driveway. Okay, you might even just be able to drive in and it compacts itself. So I'm not really going to add a lot of value to that. But if you want a nice driveway, I mean, you're looking at potentially $7 to $10 a square foot, not a linear foot, a square foot. So keep that in mind. Now, if you're going to come in and build a little cabin, even a modest cabin, if you are going to build it, is probably going to cost you around $200,000. Okay, start adding that up, and you're looking at $600,000, $650,000, maybe even $700,000, depending on what you want to build before you get to that end product. And the thing is, again, before you get to that end product, you're probably looking at around 18 months by the time you take care of permitting and stuff that we've already talked about. So not only is it going to cost you that $600,000+, it's also going to cost you quite a bit of time. Now, if you can find something that already has that in place, that being a cabin that's ready to go, something that somebody else did that you're okay with. Okay, you might be able to find that closer to $500,000 or $525,000, so you may be able to save yourself quite a bit of money. The couple of things that you got to be, you know, worried about again is how much additional money are you going to have to put in to make it yours, right? To make it exactly like you want it. And then depending on how old it is, if it's already got things like HVAC and septic and refrigerators and stuff like that, well, how old are those appliances? How old are those systems? And are you going to have to reinvest and buy new ones now or in the very near future? So again, if you can find something that's in place, it's probably going to cost you a little bit less, and you're going to get in a lot faster. But you know, make sure that you understand what the maintenance on that property looks like and what you want that to look like and how much it's going to cost you to get it from where it is to where you want it. And then you've got that barn conversion, right? And by the way, when I'm looking, and I search on homes.com, I don't like Zillow, I don't like their interface, but when I'm looking on homes.com for keywords, I'll put in barn, and it'll pop up properties that have barns. And some of them have cabins, some of them have houses, and some of them are just raw land with an old barn out there. So that's how I search for them. But again, if you're finding a property that has a barn, and outside of that it's raw, you still might be able to pick up that thing for $300, $325, maybe $350. And you're going to have that structure in place. And again, as long as it is ready to go, as long as it's structurally sound, you know, you're starting from that point. So let's say you're starting from $350, and now you're renovating to get there. So by the time you get to where it's ready for you to live in, you're probably going to be right in the middle of finding that cabin that's already existing versus, you know, kind of rebuilding building from scratch. But the cool thing about it is, one, again, you're preserving history, but two, you know, you're going to have a product that you're actually looking for and that you're excited about. And now that you kind of have the idea of the different paths that you can go, I want to give you a couple of warnings. The first one is, make sure that the distance between you and where that weekend property is something that you're comfortable with. I've talked to a lot of people that when they bought something, you know, they were younger, they may have been in their 30s and 40s, and they found, you know, they were looking for hunting land, and they found this 20 or 30 acres or 10 acres, whatever, and it was 4 hours away, and that's no problem. Friday after work, they would get off, they'd go out there, get there at 10 o'clock, you know, have Saturday, and then leave Sunday at noon. Okay, well, that's fine when you're younger, but as you're getting older, you probably aren't going to want to drive 4 hours on a weekend. You know, you maybe if you can take off on a Thursday or a Wednesday and spend 4 or 5 days, but I talk to a lot of people who used to be okay with that 4-hour drive, and now they're like, yeah, we go there twice a year. I go there for opening weekend of deer season, and then I typically go sometime in the spring to mow and, you know, get things cleaned up before it gets hot for the summer. And that's the only time they go out there. So make sure you understand what your tolerance level is for travel now, and more importantly, project forward, because if you're okay with a 4-hour drive now, chances are in 10 or 15 years, you're probably not going to be okay with that same drive, and you're going to utilize it less. And on that same note, if it's further than an hour away or an hour and a half or 2 hours, how often are you going to get out there and work on it? You know, if you've got maintenance stuff, you know, you got a septic system to take care of, you got to mow the yard, you got to trim trees, you got to do all this stuff. And then you can kind of get to where you resent a property where you go out for a weekend and you spend all day Saturday, you know, doing work that's been neglected because you haven't been there in 2 months, and then Sunday you get kind of the morning before you have to go home. So understand, you know, how much effort's going to be required and how close do you want it for that effort. And likewise, when you're designing what you're going to build on there, the further away it is, personally, I would put less effort into it unless the goal is to stay there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. Because you can spend a lot of money and make it really, really nice. But again, going back to, if you don't ever go out there and use it, does it make sense? Because, you know, I'll tell you from a real estate perspective, the further out something is from a major metro area, call it Austin, San Antonio, whatever, Denver, New York City, the further out it is, as you get past an hour, hour and a half, you start to see diminishing returns. In other words, if you have to sell that property at some point and it's 3 hours out there, the buyer pool that's comfortable with going out and taking over your project 3 hours from their home, that is a very, very, very small buyer pool. So keep that in the back of your mind as you're designing whatever it is, you know, that you're going to do there. If you're okay with 4 hours now to travel, maybe it's best to move like a tiny home out there, or have you know, general shelters building or something like that, just in the meantime, to see, hey, am I actually using this thing? And then if you don't, well, then maybe you can sell that tiny home and sell the property, and no harm, no foul. But take these things into account before you go, oh man, I found the perfect property. It's 6 hours from the house. I'm okay with waking up on a Friday morning and driving 6 hours and then driving back on Sunday. Something tells me a little bit down the line, you're probably going to regret that decision. And then we talked a little bit about legacy. If you're looking for something that you can leave to your kids and your grandkids and your great-grands and all of that stuff. Okay. The other thing I'm going to encourage you to do is spend a little bit more time, spend a little bit more money. You want designs that are timeless, because, I mean, if you're talking grandkids and great-grandkids, you know, that property is going to be in the family 40, 50, 60 years, okay? Designs that are timeless are going to be, I mean, like your great-grandkids are going to love you if you do something cool like an A-frame in the mountains or something like that, you know, a little A-frame by the lake. I mean, that is timeless design. But if you do something weird, something with a gambrel roof, you know, kind of a weird little Morgan building, what it's going to end up being for the family after you're gone is, man, I used to love spending time here as a kid, but I really don't like this property. I need to invest a lot of money into it. I need to build other structures. I need, you know, these weren't built very well. They, you know, had plywood siding and stuff like that. It's falling apart, and they're just going to end up, you know, kind of regretting it. So timeless design, really quality materials, those are the things that you need to consider if this is going to be a legacy property, because again, you want to leave them something that they really want and they treasure and is a joy for them. You don't want to leave them a bunch of headaches and maintenance.